Hello everyone and welcome back to another average review. Now, the review I uploaded yesterday was a pretty big one, so I think I'm just going to step back and make something smaller today, reviewing the Sonic 3 movie Sonic and Tails figures. I reviewed Shadow previously, and since I got these today, I decided I'd review them too. Now, for the most part, the packaging on these guys is the same as Shadow, just with a couple things different. They've got the key art for all the characters on the side, the Sonic 3 logo, and their respective character names at the bottom. On the back, we have pictures of the figures, bio, their name, movie logo again, the points of articulation, and the other figures in the wave. I do like how the figures are actually posed on the back and not just in a static standing pose. Pretty nice touch. Getting the figures out of the packaging, and I'm just going to say that if you've seen my review of the Shadow figure from this same line, well, I'm going to say most of the same things I said about the Shadow. Especially since this Sonic seems to have a bit of reuse from that Shadow figure. Mainly the thighs, upper legs, shoulders, butterfly joints, and upper arms, along with the joint pieces themselves, since they don't have any texture on them. But hey, the lower arms, hands, feet, lower legs, torso, and obviously the heads are completely different pieces. But still, looking at both of them, I mean, they've got a really good amount of detail, especially for $15 Sonic figures, you know? Let's start off with Sonic here, and you know, he's pretty nice. I mean, that's obviously Sonic, but it's also obviously the movie version. You know, he's got the separated eyes and the blue arms. And like Shadow, he has this glossy piece over the eyes, which does sort of give the impression that it's, you know, real-looking eyes. There is one odd thing I'd like to mention. These translucent pieces in his quills. Now, they did release a version of Sonic in, like, a multi-pack with Sonic, Tails, Shadow, and Knuckles that had a light-up feature, but, this one doesn't have that. And the Shadow also doesn't have that, so I don't know why they're here. It might just be like a factory screw-up, or just a really weird design choice. Either way, it doesn't matter too much. He's got the paint inside his ears, and he's got, you know, a nice cocky grin on his face, which really fits Sonic. The stomach is just painted on, but that's fairly accurate to the movie design, since it's just different colored fur on his body. He's got some good sculpting on his gloves, of course his body. I mean, you can see all the fur and quill texturing on there. And his shoes, I mean, that's just perfect. He's even got details on the bottom. I mean, that's just fantastic. Especially these, well, I'm pretty sure they're socks. I mean, look at that texturing. That's really nice. I could say a lot of the same things about Tails. Now, his smile's a little goofy looking, but, you know, Tails is a fairly goofy character, at least in the movies, so I think it's fine. He's got the same translucent pieces, and also his 3 hair tufts are very big. They stick out a lot, and I think that's really nice. I mean, he's just adorable. Look at him. And honestly, besides the added texturing and details of the movie designs, Tails is pretty much just the same as game Tails in terms of his design. I mean, taking a look at these tails, I mean, they're just perfect. I mean, look at them. Look at how big they are. It's great. And I really like all the detailing on his shoes. Basically, every positive thing I have to say about Sonic's sculpt, I can say the same about Tails. And honestly, so far, just looking at him, every figure in this line. Now, moving on to articulation, this is where we actually do get to see a fair bit of differences between these two. But both their heads are on standard ball joints. Sonic doesn't get, well, he gets a fair bit of up and down, but Tails, not too much. He doesn't get any tilt, but Sonic gets a fair amount, but they all get to swivel their heads side to side. Now, they both have shoulders that can swivel back and forth, and hinge upwards. You can see that on Tails and on Sonic. Now, here's where more differences start. Sonic has butterfly joints and bicep swivel. Now, granted, they both have single-jointed elbows. Now, Tails's can just hinge about 90 degrees and swivel side to side. But Sonic's hinges above 90 degrees and swivels at both the upper arm and at the forearm. Granted, they both have the same style of hand articulation, where their hands can swivel and hinge up and down, and they've got Toy Biz style finger articulation that lets them form a fist. Now, Sonic does have a ball-jointed torso, but it only really gets side to side, not much tilt or forward and back. Tails doesn't get any articulation in the torso, but he gets some added articulation from his tails. Now, of course, they can spin around, but they've got an up and down hinge and swivel at each of the tails, so you can have them at rest or in a flying position, and then you can spin it around. That's a really nice touch. Now, moving down to the legs, Tails' legs can kick forward and swivel side to side. Meanwhile, Sonic has ball joint hips that do get kick forward and move outwards, so they can get a really good split. But technically, Tails can accomplish the same by just, well, pivoting his legs to the side. Tails has single joint knees that get swivel. Sonic, same as his arms, he's got single joint knees with a bit of swivel at the upper leg and the lower leg, and he also benefits from thigh swivel. But they both have feet that can hinge forwards, backwards, and pivot side to side. Moving on to the figure comparisons now, and we're starting off with the standard comparison for this series, the Marvel Legends Renew Your Vows Spider-Man and Spinneret. As I showed in the Shadow the Hedgehog video, unfortunately, 6-inch figures do not scale well with these new Sonic movie figures, since, Sonic's, I'd say, meant to be around half the size of a regular person, and this is not half the size of these figures. They also, unfortunately, don't scale well with Jakks Pacific's 4-inch Sonic figures, these ones being Mecha Sonic on the left and Classic Robotnik on the right. But hey, they scale pretty well with the Jakks Pacific Death Egg robot. Granted, this is not at all accurate to the size of the movie version. That one was a lot bigger than this. Although, of course, they scale well with Shadow since he's from the exact same series as these guys and shares a lot of parts with Sonic. They also don't look too bad with this random Metal Sonic variant from Sonic Prime. This is the only Sonic Prime related thing I own and probably will ever own, but hey, it looks pretty cool, and honestly, I kinda like the look of it next to Movie Sonic. Although, as is tradition for this review series, here's the Sonic 3 movie Sonic and Tails with Hitmonkey and Goliath. Now, I mentioned this in the Shadow review, but honestly, these are some of the best Sonic figures made in recent time. And honestly, if you ask me, they're the best Sonic figures ever made. Well, they're at the very least up there in my mind. And at $15 per figure, it's hard to go wrong with these guys. And hey, these guys aren't too hard to find, unlike Shadow. I saw plenty of Sonics at one of my local Walmarts, and there was another Tails at the same Walmart where I got this Sonic and Tails. So they aren't too hard to track down. And honestly, I'd recommend it. If you like Sonic the Hedgehog, or just think these guys look cool, they're fairly inexpensive, so yeah, I'd recommend jumping on them, even if they don't actually have any accessories, which is my only minor criticism of this new line. Who knows though, maybe that'll change with future releases. So, I'm gonna give Tails an 8 out of 10 and Sonic a 9 out of 10. The 8 out of 10 for Tails is just the lacking articulation compared to Sonic and Shadow, but he's still a fantastic Tails figure. I mean, just look at him. And hey, Sonic is fantastic. Now, personally, I don't like him as much as Shadow, but that's partially just because, I mean, it's a figure of Shadow the Hedgehog. I don't think really anything can beat that. But hey, like I said, fantastic figures, I'd recommend. And if you made it this far into the video, well, I'd like to tell you to have a great day, 'cause you deserve it.